Hello again, and welcome to Mastermind Minutes. My name's Gary Occhiogrosso. I'm managing partner of Franchise Growth Solutions. That's this big picture in back of me. You can learn more about what we do by clicking the link above or below the webcast or podcast, depending on the platform you're listening or watching on. And as most of you know, but for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Mastermind Minutes is the webcast podcast that features one guest, one question, and one expert answer in a matter of minutes, not hours. We focus on small business, franchising, things that touch Main Street, not so much Wall Street. As I said, we do it in minutes, not hours. Today, my guest is Michael Alexander, and Michael is the president and CEO of Recycle Away. Michael brings 25 years of experience in sustainability, recycling, and business development to the company. He has worked with a who's who of corporations, universities, NGOs, and governments across North America in order to improve their recycling and environmental systems, which I think is so important today. Michael, good day, good morning. We're recording this in the morning. How are you today?
Great, Gary. Thanks so much for having me today.
No, thank you for being with us. Michael, before we get into the question, why don't you tell us a little bit about Recycle Away, about you, your background, and give the audience a little bit of color on who you are and who Recycle Away is.
All right. Well, Recycle Away is my first company. I was previously in government and environmental nonprofit work for over 20 years and kind of sucked the lifeblood out of me doing that. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And finally, my position that I held for about 18 years in the nonprofit world got terminated, and I needed to save the family. So I started in my attic in 2009. And the reason it was so cool was because I realized I could start a company with very little upfront investment, no inventory, no brick and mortar, no rent. And that's e-commerce. That's how e-commerce works. And so it's been quite a rise since then. You can see behind me our goal for 2020 is $20 million in sales.
Love it.
There was a time in March where when the pandemic was beginning and it seemed like commerce was getting shut down, that goal looked out of reach. But I'm happy to report we are more than halfway to the goal here, halfway through the year, and we can talk about the pivot that got us there.
Great. And I love to hear the stories of people starting businesses in their attic, in your case, or in the basement, the garage. I mean, I'm also a franchise guy, so I'm also a believer in that business model. I guess overall, as an umbrella statement, the idea that people are entrepreneurial and they kind of take their lives, so to speak, and the destiny and control of their financial ability into their own hands and are willing to do whatever it takes to make it work. To me, that is not only fascinating, but it's really my life's work. So I love to hear that stuff. And listen, you're right. It's halfway through the year. You're halfway to goal. So you're on budget despite the pandemic. That's notable. That's great. So let's get into the question here, because you mentioned the word pivot. Back in March, a lot of companies were, pivoting, so to speak. So, how did you make a quick pivot? How do you recommend people make a pivot when an unexpected crisis, pandemic or otherwise, hits your business? What kind of tips can you share with the folks watching and listening to today?
All right. Well, thanks, Gary. I mean, I had a good run for 10 years before the pandemic, and I actually was never tested. I had a lot of good luck. I had a lot of momentum, a lot of things worked that we tried, and it was kind of a glory run. And then around March 15th, it seemed like commerce was shutting down in the U.S. It seemed like that deliveries, just basic shipping from A to B location was going to be shut down. And that was a really scary prospect. And well, maybe that didn't actually happen in practice. In theory, in practice, it really did for our customers, because many of our deliveries, which were recycling containers and trash cans, these are very large commercial deliveries, sometimes truckload quantities. Many of those were out on the road heading to a location that had shut down in the last day. And so those deliveries weren't going to be, no one was there to accept those deliveries. So that was a real eerie feeling, to know that you've got potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of goods in transit and no one there to accept them. And they're going to have to turn around, and you're going to pay, a couple $1,000s in freight to bring them back to your warehouse. And then you think, boy, what are we going to do? How are we going to get over this? We got about a $200,000 a month overhead. So, each week if I don't get any sales, I'm potentially bleeding $50,000 in cash. I kind of compared that to like having a $50,000, home electric bill, because that's basically what it is. As an entrepreneur, your personal finances are the same as your business finances.
Yes,
and
they are.
it comes into focus when all of a sudden you got an electric bill for $50,000 a month that you didn't have, or $50,000 a week in my case, and you got no way to pay for it. And that's really what I thought, like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. And I was just remarking, it was one of those things where I thought to myself, boy, I should have sold this company. My God, when I had the chance. It's pretty funny though, as I sit here today, that would have been the worst thing I could have done, was sell this company. So that outlook changed dramatically in that month of March, as we looked to see what are our strengths and how can we capitalize on our strengths to try to pivot. We had some strengths that not everyone has, and I knew those right away. We have our customers, who are Fortune 100 companies, universities, governments, people that really, and facility managers within those corporations. And those are the people that are really on the front lines of the response to COVID. And they're the ones who are going to have to keep their facilities safe. And so we knew we had that, but we didn't have the products. We had trash cans and recycling bins, but we didn't have what those facility managers are going to need to respond. But we had the audience, we had the customer list, and we had an amazing company already built. We had a great team, we had great technology, we had two great websites. So we had to kind of been, in many ways, kind of waiting for this day, preparing for this day for 10 years. Wow. And so at first, my first thought for pivot was, wow, I need to get into cleaning supplies. I need to get into disinfecting cleaning solutions, because we've got facility managers and that's what they're going to be doing. But after looking at that, spending as little time as possible, when you're pivoting, you've got to fail fast. You got to fail really fast, because every second that you spend going down one path is a second you didn't spend going down the right path. Mm-hmm. And so the opportunity costs for anything are so high when you're pivoting. And so that's why you got to fail fast. So our first thought was, we just need to load our website with cleaning products, disinfectant, gallons of disinfectant. Okay, well, we actually had a supplier, Ascendant, which is a huge B2B warehousing company, that supplies that product, and they've always been a supplier of us for trash cans. So we thought maybe they could be a supplier for us for cleaning products. And we spent probably a week thinking that was going to be our new pivot. And what we learned was, these products are complicated. These products are getting out of stock really quickly. We can't figure out how to keep an eye on stock levels. And so if we are going to create 50 new product pages, what if those 50 new products went out of stock the same week that we created the product pages? That does us no good to have 50 product pages with a product that you can't get. And that's what a lot of people in the facility management space are dealing with, which is that you could sell $10 million worth of products in a month, but you can't get the products because they're sold out. So we wanted to figure out what we could focus on that we had some experience with. We'd never had experience with cleaning products, and we thought maybe we could get into it. We spent, like I said, a week trying to fail on that. And I think we failed when we realized we could never figure out what our inventory levels were, because we would be we'd be hostage to the inventory levels of warehouses that we didn't know much about, and they didn't have good systems for keeping their inventory. So we talked about, well, you know, hands are a big thing, right? With a pandemic, your hands. Everyone wants to keep their hands clean. Our customers, over the years, we really started to focus on customers that wanted high-end trash cans and recycling bins I can't talk on the show. At the front of their house. They wanted, when a visitor comes into a high-end Ritz-Carlton hotel, they don't want to see a grubby trash can with a big plastic bag showing it. They want a nice stainless steel container that's going to match the decor. Same with a big corporation like a Snapchat. They've got a beautiful headquarters in Santa Monica on the beach. You know, they want nice things at the front of their corporation. So we had been really successful in the front of house for high-end corporate and university settings. And so we thought, well, these same people are going to want something really nice at the front of their house for disinfecting guests' hands and employees' hands. And so, well, how are we gonna get into that market? We're going to need a few things. We're going to need some receptacles, basically, that can dispense either hand sanitizer or wipes, because those are the two things that people are using on their hands. But these things have to be high-end and these have to be pretty. So we looked at our manufacturers, and lo and behold, a few of our manufacturers had products already in their catalogs and already able to produce that they had focused on, and we had actually carried, but they were primarily for gyms. So we looked at ways for high-end gyms. We had actually done a huge order for recycling containers to Equinox, for instance. Equinox, incidentally, if you know them, they have hundreds of locations nationwide. One of the scariest letters we ever got during this pandemic was from Equinox. We had just done a $400,000 sale to them. They wrote us a letter that said that they're no longer paying any AP. Luckily, they only owed us $300 at that point, down from $300,000. So obviously gyms were going to get creamed during the pandemic, but we knew that other corporations were still open. So one of the things that gave us hope after we were able to showcase these front of house wipes dispensers is really what we started to focus on, stainless steel wipes dispensers, is we got a call from Raytheon Corporation, headquarters near Boston, right outside of Boston in Waltham, Mass. And they wanted $270,000 worth of wipes dispensers. That was really the first sense that the pivot was the right pivot. It was a signpost along the road that we really needed. We needed a few good signs to make sure that we were doing the right thing. I mean, we could have stuck with trash cans and recycling bins. We could have just tried to do a better job at selling those, our traditional products. Our sales were down 90%. You know, that $50,000 home electric bill that was coming due every week because I couldn't sell enough recycling bins and trash cans was looming large. So I think when you're making a pivot, you need a few initial signs that it's the right pivot. And thankfully, that sign for us was the Raytheon order. And so we were kind of off and running once we got that.
Well, you know, it seems like there was almost a funneling effect. First, by evaluating what you currently do and what assets you had. You had trucks, you have distribution points, distribution ability. So that's kind of the assessment. I get it that you went down, the wrong path initially, and it's interesting because the supply chain, yes, was impacted, but I also think you would have gotten into something very crowded. So if I'm hearing you correctly, when you kind of funneled this down to a pivot, you looked at who are your customers and what are the things that they're looking for, and how does that best connect to what you already do? And I think you used the word earlier. You said, well, somebody needed a trash receptacle, but it needed to be pretty. And I understand that, and I understand Blink for sure, and I understand not Blink. I'm sorry, that's their other brand, Equinox. So I understand that kind of stuff. But the fact is that you were able to almost carve out a niche, find something that people need, do it in a little bit different way, and then I hear you about kind of that sign when Raytheon called you and said, "Hey, we need this." Tell me a little bit now about, again, staying on kind of this pivot topic, but one of the things that we've been having conversations with not only my guests on the program, but also just in my practice, is what are the lessons learned? So it sounds like to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like to me, these hand sanitizing stations, these wipe stations, I believe that's what you call them, it sounds like that might now become part of your menu, so to speak, going forward, because the need will always exist. Am I overstating that?
You're not. We've become a supplier of consumables for the first time in our company history, which is both the disinfectant and the wipes themselves. And so we're warehousing products. We've never actually controlled inventory. We're doing that now because that's really the only way you can fulfill in that space. And so we're buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of disinfecting products and warehousing them. And that's going to be a whole new business model, a whole new opportunity for us to have repeat customers that are on regular refills.
Well,
so the refill business is huge for us.
I hear you. I mean, I've been using the analogy, and not to be insensitive, but it's as if the forest has burned down and everyone was really sad and afraid and scared, but a whole bunch of new sunlight shone on the ground and there's all these new trees that are blooming. So, in the restaurant business, for my restaurant clients, we've been actually having people who want to open up restaurants. They've been finding what we call second generation restaurant space. They're restaurants that have gone out of business, but all the mechanicals are already in the building. So for an individual who wants to open up a restaurant, it's maybe half the price because all the heavy lifting has been done. So I so admire the fact that not only did you pick up on these other opportunities, but now you've created them, or you're molding them to be part of your regular business. And by the way, it connects to your main business. So it's not like you're extending your product line just for the sake of extending it. It seems to be all connected. How important is that branding, or that brand connection, that what you do is in the cleaning, recycle, sustainability type business? Do you watch out for that so that you're not confusing your customers?
We do. I mean, we were ready to give up on that just to survive. I mean, we were ready to do anything to survive. And I think, it felt like every day I got like, the first day they, chopped off my wrist, my hand. The next day I lost an arm. The next day I lost a leg. And, each day it was almost like it was kind of like it was the ultimate challenge for an entrepreneur, the pandemic. Every day you had to come up with new strategies to adapt, because they were making it harder. Each day it got harder and harder as the pandemic took hold and as the country shut down. And that was fun, and as an entrepreneur, because for me, it was really my first challenge. And I was able to capitalize on what we had, which, again, luck is important as an entrepreneur. One of the things that we had was e-commerce. E-commerce was one of the big things that came out of this pandemic. We had B2B e-commerce, which is, even more important in some ways than B2C e-commerce. You know, for instance, Raytheon, even though, you know, they shut down and sent, you know, 3/4 of their employees home, they still had to keep an operation going. They're an essential business. And half of our factories closed. But the two factories that made our dispensers for us were able to get classified as essential businesses and remain operating. To your point about not being a crowded market, that's correct. Wipe dispensers, really, that was a huge opening. There was very little other than the traditional gym wipe dispenser. You know, it's pretty amazing. Think about it. You know, like, okay, so gyms were the only places that really had high-end wipe dispensers for the last 10 years. Now, every corporation, every university, every, you know, think about Manhattan, think about all the banks and financial operations in Manhattan. At the front of all those houses, all those businesses, you're going to have a wipes dispenser or a hand sanitizer dispenser.
I see them everywhere now. I see them everywhere. I guess
Yeah.
you know, what I want to kind of conclude here with before we give your contact information is I just want to state that, you know, throughout the pandemic, you know, you turn on the TV set and you hear about the warriors and the gladiators, and sometimes the entrepreneur group is not recognized as a gladiator. But I have to tell you, Michael, it's people, it's you, it's people like you, it's companies like you that actually recognize the idea that if our economy is going to get back, you know, in order, that people are going to need to go back to work. And this notion that we're never going to be in physical contact with one another again. You know, you watch TV and it's like, you know, it's the invasion of the body snatchers or something. But this notion that people need to get back to cooperative working, collective working in environments where there are more than, you know, 3 people. It's you and companies like you that are helping companies like Raytheon, for example, put themselves in a position to bring their employees back in a safe, healthy environment. And I think that when you look at this story that you've just told, you know, you've got to connect the dots and you've got to look at kind of how the dominoes fall. It's not just about you, you know, or your company doing this one thing. It's how does it impact the person whose kid is going back to school and now he or she is going to go back to work, but wants to make sure they're in a clean, healthy environment. And in a pivot, survival mode type of situation, which you described, as I said, beautifully, the positive impact is it's tremendous. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that, Gary. And, you know, and any entrepreneur is only as good as his team, you know, and my team is so good, you know. My head of marketing, he and I decided that we were going to, you know, basically quarantine together in the office. And for 8 weeks, we were the only 2 people in the office, and the rest of my team heroically was working from home. And we were cooking up new ideas to overwhelm my poor team working at home every day, and kind of the nerve center in the office. And so without that, you know, I would have been nothing. I would have been so having the team again. That was just another thing that we had in place prior to the pandemic that made us able to pivot, was the great team. And that's why you never realize how important those things are until you really need them.
Absolutely.
And so shout out to my team for sure.
Well, that's great. And listen, the mark of a true leader is recognizing and understanding the people that they work with. So again, I commend you on that culture and on the point of view. Michael, if someone wanted to reach you, I don't know, maybe for a little advice, or if they want to, you know, buy your product, for example, or maybe they need to understand a little bit more about what you do and how you might be able to help their company, how does someone get in touch with you? And as I mentioned earlier, we kind of post all of this information. So what's the best way for people to reach you if they'd like to get in touch?
Well, thanks, Gary. I mean, our website's really the central place for everything, including my personal contact information. You can learn about all of our products and our team and all of our customers we have the most amazing list of customers. I can't even, we've just in the last week, we've done, Facebook and Google, all the tech companies, and all the big universities we've been doing. So you can see all the customers that we have on our website. You can see case studies. We did the New York Yankees. So that's recycleaway.com.
Simple enough. Michael, thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. This is one of the more interesting topics that we've had as a discussion point. And your story, as I mentioned, it's terrific. It's heroic. You're a gladiator in the entrepreneurial arena. So thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gary.